Hey everybody, this is Jim Grzanzio back in Hyderabad, India at the Sangam 19 conference. And I'm back outside now here with Deborah Lilly. Deborah, welcome.
Hello, welcome to you too.
Thank you very much. It's been a really interesting conference here. Exchanged a couple of emails with you, wanted to have a conversation with you. You're an ACE director, you're a prominent speaker here, so wanted to have a conversation about what you're talking about as well as the event itself and really anything that comes up. As we were speaking a little bit earlier, off camera, you said that you're doing a slightly different talk here today. So what are we talking about?
Yeah, so my expertise is fusion applications and the technology that's built on. And I've spoken at Sangam before, and this year Sai, or Super Sai as he's known here, he asked me if I'd come back again, and he said that he wanted a slightly different angle on the content. So I said, oh yeah, that's fine. I'm happy to talk about anything, me. And he said, could I give a presentation on the highlights from Open World on SaaS? That's pretty straightforward. And then he said, and what about what you've learned from the customers? So I thought about it, and I thought I am in a privileged position. I've had the opportunity to work in so many different implementations, albeit a small part of each. But then that's lots of case studies, and normally, you're lucky if you get one or two case studies. So it's quite interesting. So I put together a presentation, and it was a question of thinking about all of them, and and actually aggregating all of those different learnings from them. And so I've just given the presentation, and I really enjoyed it. Could happily have talked for much longer. But it was the feedback that I got from the audience that was really interesting. Some of them have started working in Fusion, and some of the consultants in the room had done one or two. So what that did was it verified their approach, gave them some ideas, but also showed that other people have the same challenges. And then for the end user organisations in the room, it gave them more things to think about. So actually I think I'll do it again. It was a good study of what's happened in the past.
Interesting. What were some of their reactions?
Well, so lots of nodding and then saying, oh, so for instance, I talked about how finance and HCM, your people and your money are so much more closely tied in Fusion. The architecture is shared, and so you might not implement them at the same time, but you should consider both of them at the beginning. And one member of the audience explained that they hadn't taken that approach, and they had to undo much of what they'd done 6 months later. And actually I know that had been a problem with a number of customers, because Oracle went on to write some white papers that I had some input into to try and explain to people the considerations that you need. And then there were other things like, you can't customize Fusion apps, but everybody wants to, and everybody says, but we're different. And a couple of questions came up in the room, and several people stopped me afterwards. So how do you stop people insisting? And I said, well, it's right at the very beginning. In the sales cycle, you need incredibly senior sponsorship of the program, and you need them involved all the time, so that when someone keeps saying, in the IT department says, no, we must do this, we've always done this, you can go back and say, this isn't what you bought. You've bought a system that can't be customized, because when you customize it, you're just storing up trouble for the future. And so just very simple things that to me just seem like the norm, but actually that's based on lots of experience, and that's what we're here to do, is to share our experience.
Sounds like it was a pretty active session.
It was. I love Sangam. I love the audience participation. For a speaker, you're only as good as how your audience sees you. And so an interactive audience that has questions either validates what you're talking about or gives you things to think about for the next time. And I always come away with learning points. So yeah, it was very, very good.
Your face is lighting up when you're talking about this. So So you said you love Sangam. This is your second or third?
Second Sangam, yeah. In my second Sangam, my third visit to India. I love the fact that the people here are very much part of that community. They're all very vested in the community that they're here for. It's not just, well, we turn up every year for an event. They do have their meetups. They do an awful lot online. So it is a real community. And I love the fact that there are so many questions. It might be a bit of a generalization, but there are a lot of people in India who work for global companies as their offshore contingent. And so they're actually not customer facing or product facing. They're in the background, and it gives them an opportunity to understand the other side of it. So there's always lots of questions that come from that angle. So I really enjoy that. And also, a lot of people are interested in the next stage of their career. They see the network as part of that, their career progression. So there's lots of questions about, what area should I specialise in if I want to be doing this, etc. And it's almost like a very concentrated opportunity to mentor people. And I love that. I love to see, there's nothing more I like than someone I've taught succeeding. And, I'm not really teaching here, I'm just sharing knowledge. But if I can just share some nuggets that will help someone in their career, then perhaps their face will light up when they're talking about what they do.
That's very interesting. As I mentioned at the top, you're an ACE director. And I've spoken with a lot of ACE directors, but I haven't really actually explored what you guys actually do. So what do you guys do?
So it's a very two-way street. Okay, so the ACE program is about peers that share knowledge. And I think the very important word there is share rather than knowledge. Sometimes I hear people say, well, I'm far more an expert in X than so-and-so is. But it's not just about being really good at what you do, it's about sharing that. And so, Oracle want to acknowledge the people that do that. So there are 3 levels. ACE Associates are people who might do 1 or 2 presentations, do a blog, share knowledge locally. And then ACEs do a lot more. But then at the ACE Director level, those are people who have, it's almost part of their DNA. They want to share an awful lot, but they also want to do that sharing almost with Oracle as well. So at ACE Director level, we're expected to work with Oracle. So we do beta testing of products. I get the opportunity to work with development and do proof of concepts on things that are coming up, or how I might see it work out with customers, and that helps me. It helps the organisation that I work for, but it also helps Oracle because they're getting that feedback from somebody looking at it at a different angle. That input into product development is I just can't put a value on that. I can go to product development and say, so what are you doing here? Let me understand. And then the penny will drop and I'll say, oh, and we're going to get advantages from that, from this, and it's just that two-way feed. Oracle are, Oracle get a bad deal sometimes, and I can be quite cynical about them sometimes. That's why I could never work for them. But they do some really great things. Like in the Fusion apps, the amount of customer input that they took and they take today is amazing. And as an ACE director, I get an opportunity to be part of that and be able to, bring that back to my customers and my audiences in these events. So it's a two-way street. It's appraised annually. So we're expected to do so much, but it's not formulaic. Some people write books blogs. Some people blog every day, that they might not be speakers, or they might not have the opportunity to, like me traveling here to India. I'm very lucky. It's part of my job to be a thought leader, so I have that opportunity to do it. But other people are doing other ways of sharing, and answering questions on forums, etc., etc. And then the other benefit for me, which probably isn't in the book, is that I now have this network of real experts that when because none of us work in total isolation, and when I suddenly need to have a little bit to do with another technology, then I think, I know who I can go and ask. So it works. It's really, really good. Yeah.
Well, one of the reasons why I wanted you to explain that is not only for me, but also for India, because a lot of the people who are going to be looking at these video interviews are from here, obviously, globally as well, but focusing on Sangam, it's going to be a lot of the Indian audience. It is just a tiny number of aces here, and considering the size of the
show
thing.
you share a story about Latin America. Okay, I had the privilege of being on one of the very early ACE tours of Latin America, and we did, 7 or 8 countries, and each had a local user group, but they were quite small and quite insular. They were just basically they were geographical user groups, and that's where they were. Anyway, and they wanted all of these people who they'd seen on blogs and they'd seen at Open World, and we came and we gave presentations, but actually part of our job is also to encourage the locals. And the first couple of years, it was really easy to get on that tour because, they were desperate for people they hadn't heard to speak to come and speak. But then you would meet the locals and you'd say, actually, you're really good at this. Why don't you talk? Why don't you share your story? And, perhaps go to the country next door, because the country next door is not that far, and share your experience there, and then encourage them to be part of the program. This year, it's really difficult to get on the Latin American tour because there are so many people in Latin America. And isn't that perfect? Right? So that's what we need to be doing here in India. And I said, in my session, perhaps I had the chance to mentor someone for 10 minutes. But what if I've given them the confidence to stand up and share their experiences? And, and then reach out and nominate yourself, or nominate the people that are sharing their stories, for ACE Associate, and then be part of that network and get that confidence to stand up and do it, so that, in a couple of years' time, yes, there are still people coming into India, but there are more people in India talking and sharing their knowledge.
Well, it's an interesting story from Latin America, and I can only think it's going to be repeated here. Because this country, the community dynamic is palpable. Every single event you come here, you can feel it. So I can only imagine that that's going to be that concept in Latin America is going to be recreated here.
I really, really hope so. There's probably more that we can do. I think, perhaps we could run some panel sessions where we have local people on them as well as just us. It's a bit difficult to organise this because we're physically apart, but sometimes you share a session with somebody. I think it is important for the ACE directors to be giving back to the local organisation as well. And yes, I would love to. I think Connor said, they need 100 times the number of ACEs in India when you look at the Oracle population. And so I would encourage anybody who is sharing their knowledge. Remember, it's about sharing knowledge, not just about having knowledge. And anybody who's doing that, I encourage them to have a look at the program and see if they can be part of it.
Well, Deborah, thank you very much for coming by. I appreciate it. It was very nice. And we'll see you guys back here for some more interviews from Hyderabad at Sangam 19. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.